Welcome to the 502 Leader Series. My name is Jason Mudd. I'm your host. Thank you for listening. Each week, we bring you an inspiring person or message from right here in Louisville, Kentucky, with tips that you can incorporate into your life to help you live better. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jason Mudd. This is the 502 Leader Series, and I'm so happy to be sitting down on this beautiful Saturday with Jecorey Arthur. You might know him as 1200. How does that work?
Hundo, whatever, Mr. Arthur, wherever I'm at, whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, just happy to be here, man. Beautiful studio that you have here on East Washington Street.
Thank you.
And you do so much here, and this will get me into my first question very easily. What do you do?
I make music. I teach music.
That's simple.
Yeah.
That's simple.
Just make me a musician.
So you're known on two different facets here in Louisville because you are by day an educator. You're a music educator with Jefferson County Public Schools, not associated by, whatever. You don't care where you go. You just want to teach music, right? Mm-hmm. But as you're infamous, rather, as a hip-hop artist. How does that go with teaching music and being a hip-hop artist? That's a big juxtaposition. Yeah,
and for a while, people almost made it seem like I had to choose.
But you don't have to choose.
Yeah, do whatever you want.
That is one of the reasons why I really wanted to sit down with you, because past generations, people, like my parents' age, I think you really had to choose what you're going to do. You're going to be very singularly identified as something, and generally that's going to be your trade, your profession. And I think a lot of the people in our generation, which I don't know how old you are, but you're kind of in my age bracket. We're kind of going against that grain that you don't have to do one thing. And I think it's much more marketable, especially, to have a bunch of tools in your toolbox. How's that played into your life?
It has pros and cons. I would definitely say you can get on that borderline of spreading yourself thin once you do so much and wear so many different hats. But honestly, they all work together. If I'm in a situation where I'm performing out of town, I can also use that as an opportunity to go and teach at a school with students I've never met or never worked with before. And then vice versa. If I'm going to teach, I can book a gig. So they really help each other. So
are you a Louisville native?
Yeah. West Louisville, born and raised, lived all over the place, but Louisville all day.
So getting a little bit into your background, where did you grow up in West Louisville? You stayed in West Louisville growing up?
I've lived in all sorts of neighborhoods within Louisville itself, mostly West Louisville. Mm-hmm. And I would definitely say that molded me and shaped me in terms of just being a product of my environment more than anything. That and traveling far away from Louisville, whether it was overseas or to a different city, and just being exposed to different lifestyles, different people, different cultures. So right where I was born and very far away from where I was born, that definitely molded me as a person, as a musician.
Who do you look up to? Who did you look up to growing up, specifically in your, you look at formative years, teenage years, I think are really important, especially for men. I think teenage years, you really find out what you're going to be passionate about and what you're going to be invested in throughout your life. Who were some people that you looked up to in those years that kind of made you maybe who you are today? Maybe mentors, if you will?
So there's a song, I don't even remember what song it is. It's unreleased, but I said as a youngin', I didn't have a lot of homies. I looked up to the D-Boys and Obi-Wan Kenobi. So on one side of the spectrum, you had people who sold dope, people who were destroying their neighborhoods, who were making sure their families had food at whatever cost. And then you had Obi-Wan Kenobi, this character, this fantasy, this person who was considered to me like a superhero. And really it was just this confusion between reality and fantasy for me in terms of just looking up to people. And it wasn't until I realized who Muhammad Ali was that I realized those superheroes actually existed right there in my hometown, right there in my neighborhood.
Very interesting. At what age did you realize that Muhammad Ali existed?
I had always heard of him, you know, it was just kind of in passing as a boxer, but I didn't realize he was from Louisville probably until, I don't know, early teens, maybe preteens, right before. And it blew my mind just to know that this figure that people looked up to in so many different ways was from right around the corner from where I was.
You know, I think that it's really important to put an emphasis on something that you just said. You know, when you talk about, you know, the dope dealers and the drug dealers, and people do anything that they have to do to put food on the table. And when you're in an area that unfortunately has no hope for whatever reason that it is, you really get to the point where you will do whatever is necessary to put food on the table. And I think that people get a lot of these things separated. I don't know if the media feeds that or whatever, but people will do whatever's necessary to take care of their family. You know, and I don't know if anybody would say that family's not number one. So when you think about, you know, maybe seemingly is a bad thing that people do things with the best intentions for their own knit and their own circle. So I mean, I think that's a very, very important thing to realize, that they aren't bad people. They're just doing what they have to do, and they may not know any different.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a really cool place to come from.
Yeah, and it all kind of feeds into this cycle of, if they're in that position, more than likely they saw someone else who was in that position, and
it worked for them.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I don't think that anybody grows up and wants to do any harm. You come and you're served with this choice of me or you. And unfortunately, I think media throws in a lot of stuff that makes it seem that it's me or you. It's not an us.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. I know that's...
No, absolutely.
You know, that's kind of a... Maybe that's going too deep. I don't know. Anyway, how do you define success? What does success mean to you?
As an educator, I would definitely say you can see the light bulb go off above a kid's head when they understand something, whether it's something as simple as defining rhythm or actually producing rhythm through an instrument or with their voice. You can always see when they understand something, a concept. That is the mark of success for me as an educator. And every time one of those light bulbs goes off, that's a constant reminder for me of why I do it. I want them to appreciate something. I want them to understand something. I want them to reproduce something. I want them to be artists in their own right, whether that's through dancing, acting, singing, rapping, playing an instrument, whatever. I want them to create and express themselves.
So, playing through that, how does that in turn make you want to be different as a performance artist and as a public figure?
Inspiration, platforms. I often take my performances and use them as opportunities to give other artists a leg up or a platform of their own. Take my release show for an example. I had a middle schooler on stage who I've never worked with before. She's a wonderful vocalist and a very talented dancer as well. I gave her that opportunity just so she could say she did that, so she could use that to further her work, so she could use that experience as some sort of motivation, inspiration to do something bigger and better than that release show. Same thing at Forecastle. I had 10 kids on stage from all
your
over
Forecastle
JCPS.
thing was, I was looking at videos this morning, and just the pictures, you're underneath that overpass, and you've got these kids behind you.
Yeah.
And I love how you make your performance, and I saw this in the pictures. We'll get into where you were just this past, just yesterday even. But you put and you make your performance not just about you. It's about the people that you're going to include in that. And I love the idea and what you're bringing with this, that you're going to take your talents and use it to lift somebody else up.
Yeah.
Because that can be a pivotal moment for somebody else. And something that we really value at Yes Louisville, and something that I really value in what we're trying to do, is that you never know where inspiration is going to come from. Mm-hmm. Somebody can grab on something that you might think is nothing, but it could be everything to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And we never know what those moments are. So when you put yourself out there, really put yourself out there in what you do and you're passionate about it, you're giving so many opportunities for somebody else to maybe say, hey, I can do that too.
Absolutely.
So I thoroughly commend you with that. there's not a lot of people that can mix those two things together.
Yeah.
It's really a huge thing. Who is somebody that specifically that's mentored you and that's helped you be where you are?
Dr. Greg Byrne at the University of Louisville. He's the director of percussion studies, and he used to be the marching band director for a really long time. He was one of the first people, first musicians, first male figures that really told me not to contain myself, not to limit myself, to grow to my full potential. And working with him over the few years that I was at U of L, he made me realize, instead of like thinking outside of the box, there is no box. So Dr. Byrne at U of L is definitely number one in terms of just mentorships that I've had throughout years in life.
That's awesome. Is he still teaching?
Yeah, he's still rocking and rolling.
Very, very cool.
At U of L, yeah.
Very awesome. So still pushing that forward. What is something, this might be an easy question for you, what's something that you believe that other people think is crazy?
You know, I used to think that a lot of people thought it was crazy that I was a classical musician and a hip-hop artist. But, I mean, I'm here, and I've been here for a few years now, and shown time after time that these two things can live together. Teddy Abrams has showed that these two
Teddy
things
Abrams is
can live together.
Such a great influence on so many people.
Teddy's my dog.
Teddy is,
he's awesome. He's awesome.
So everybody has some sort of crazy in them, I think. To a certain extent. We all have our own lives and morals and opinions, so everyone can be crazy. It's hard to answer that.
It is hard to answer that. You know, I mean, the more, especially the more people that I meet, we are all eccentrics on some level. Anybody that's doing anything fun is labeled by somebody else as being crazy.
Yeah.
You know, why would you do that? That doesn't seem like a normal thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you especially, I think that you really you transcend a lot of demographics in the things that you're doing. What's the weirdest thing that somebody's come up to you and said? Or, you know, with being a teacher, being any, you know, what's the weirdest thing that somebody's come up that's really touched you?
I would say something weird in the opposite way that hasn't necessarily touched me, but there are people from these different departments of my life, like education, performance side, even the event curation side, that often tell me that I should choose that one path. I should be one-dimensional. You should be a performer. You should like try and get a record deal, or you should just teach, or you should just do that. And I always think it's interesting how people have opinions and outlooks on things, and they try and pin that on someone else. So I would say that's the weirdest in terms of someone just coming up and saying, hey, let me give you advice about how to live your life.
I'm sure that's unsolicited too.
Yeah,
This is, you know, a lot of people try to project that. And, you know, it's funny how people are, and I think everybody might be like this to a degree. You want to project what your values are on somebody else, and I think that's effectively what you're doing. You're trying to project your values on somebody else, but I get the sense with you, a very altruistic goal in trying to build somebody else up organically, just so that they can be something great.
For sure.
I think that's just such an awesome position to be in. You know, we all have our own agendas on some level. And those agendas, by way of influence from the world, can be very clouded at times. So I think that's very, very neat. What's something that you struggle with? What's maybe a weakness on your end?
Eating.
Yeah.
The sun will go down and I'm drowning in emails, and I realize I haven't eaten dinner or lunch or breakfast.
Well,
That's right for all musicians.
That's
we all
right.
forget to eat.
I think anybody that's really invested in a lot of things, that becomes something that's on the back end.
Yeah.
For a lot of people.
Mothers will not be proud of us.
I know. Oh, don't listen, Mom.
Well, you know what? You know, self-care is something that's really, it's not on the forefront of people who try to give a whole lot. You know, self-care, and it's something that's so important because you got to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
You can't pour from an empty cup. That's something that I try to think about every day. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You can't give to people if you're not full.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, on so many levels. Are you a very faith-based person?
I believe in a higher power. Yeah.
Yeah. How does that drive and guide you daily?
You know, one time I was at church, and this was like years ago, And it wasn't a really dark time in life where I was questioning whether or not there was a higher power, but sometimes you're in a situation, you get this overwhelming feeling inside of you, it's chest pain, and I think that is evidence that there is something. People call it anxiety, people call it whatever you want to call it, but I think that's some sort of spirit, that's some sort of higher power within us. So what was your question again? I just thought of that one moment in life.
No. I just talking about faith and how faith guides you, and how faith, faith is the unseen. Faith is the unknown. It's the yeah.
So that if I have that feeling, I know that something I'm doing is supposed to happen, or not supposed to happen.
That's interesting.
So I use that little spirit inside of me, that God inside of me, that whatever you want to call it inside of me, to really make judgments on the decisions that I make in life, and really understand where I'm supposed to go and what I'm supposed to do.
I think that's an undervalued thing. What you're talking about is instinct. What you're talking about is intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in a world where information is so cheap, that we are really undervaluing our intuition in what we feel as the right thing to do. And I was just listening to something just on the way here. My phone's doing a live video. I can't pull my note, but I took a note about this coming here, and it was basically, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was, if you look to have all the facts, you're going to miss every opportunity. Because we're in a fact-based society. We can easily pull out a phone and search for whatever the right answer is. We don't often do that enough in some degrees. We act on emotion a whole lot, but at the same time, we can information ourselves to death, when really we should just trust our gut feeling on what feels right.
Yeah,
because that's the true thing. I think that's where you get into a spiritual calling and a spiritual. Not to get into that, because that's different for everybody, but that's very, very neat. What time do you wake up in the morning?
I guess coming from the other question, whenever God wakes me up.
Whenever God wakes you up.
I usually wake up before my alarm goes off. And it's awful because it's just like 1 minute before the alarm goes off. And that 1 minute feels like an hour when you're asleep.
Sure.
But just whenever, I teach percussion ensemble before school. So I get to school early. So I wake up maybe 6-something-ish. Yeah.
What is the first 6? And let me preface this question. I'm a big believer in making the most out of your morning. I think that the morning time is the only time in the day that most people have the most control over their lives. You don't have the outside influences. You don't have the things pulling you in every direction. So you can be very intentional and driven in the morning to get the things that you want to get done. And so what does the first 60 minutes of your day look like?
I pick up my brother. He goes to Height Elementary. So I pick him up. We talk. We vibe out in the car. We usually listen to music and dance and sing. We get to school. I have a percussion ensemble. And percussion ensemble could be anything and everything. Everything from, it's Junker Hawks is the name of percussion ensemble. So we're playing on trash can lids, or maybe we're working on a traditional percussion ensemble piece where it's more marimba, xylophone, glockenspiel incorporated. So it really just depends on that repertoire.
What you teach? What's the age group that you teach music at Height? Is it
K through 5? So he's like 6 to.
Oh, so that's a pretty wide range of kids.
Yeah, it's insane how different kindergarten is from
sure
teaching 5th grade. Very, very different. But yeah, that's the age range.
How do you go in and mix the different cultures? How do you go and because people come from all different areas, and when you're a teacher, that's such an interesting thing, because you're getting people, especially that young, where maybe the outside world hasn't fully made that impression in them. How do you deal with mixing everybody?
Cultural relevance. So at the end of the school year, I do a contemporary music unit with the older students in the intermediate grades. And we look at everything from like hip hop, jazz, country music, pop. And not everyone likes everything, obviously. But what we do up front is we lay out all the facts, all the historical entities that go into these genres, and then we have a class discussion. We debate, we compare, we talk about how Beethoven wrote this symphony and it took years and it was just him. And then, Beyonce wrote this music and it took however long, and she had 10 writers on it. So we compare that kind of music, and we think about the differences, we think about the similarities, and we find what's culturally relevant to them within that genre, as well as other things, whether it's like, Beethoven or Romanticism, just kind of depends. But we try to find bridges to fill in the gaps.
Very, very cool. Kind of talking on that level when you talk about different artists, and I'm sure that this, I don't even know if you can answer this question, but if you were going to pick, I want to say 5, but 3 might be easier for time, but who are the artists that have made the most impact in your personal life? And then, are those same artists the same ones that have driven your professional life?
Personally, I would definitely say Tchaikovsky. It's one of my favorite composers.
Why?
Tchaikovsky is one of my favorite composers because he's the first, at least, orchestral classical composer that I looked at one of their scores and actually seen the ink and realized as the orchestra was playing that I could relate to it personally, because he orchestrates a lot of times with split parts. So the violin section might start a run and then it goes all the way across the orchestra and it ends over here in the basses. And I just kind of parallel with that and related to it as a human being, how you start here and it develops and then it eventually ends here. But you go through all these different walks of life, these ranges, this huge spectrum. So Tchaikovsky is the first person that I looked at like that. And then also I played his 4th symphony and just became attached to it as a musician, as a percussionist. So it definitely molded the way that I approach music just from having the experience of performing his 4th symphony. So Chaik. And Kanye, because he was also another person like Dr. Byrne, where he was like, there is no box, just forget living in this one lane, living in this one genre, this one dimension. And then another artist I would say is probably Katie Lee Jones. That's my partner downstairs. And Katie was the first person that wanted to not only do something with me creatively, but also elevate my career to the point where it wasn't a personal gain and there was no agenda. She genuinely just believed in what I was doing so much that she was willing to do anything creatively to help with it. And she's taken me from what I used to be to what I am now, and I would definitely say I'm a better person, a better man, a better creative from her influence and from her collaboration.
Neat. What does it mean to you when you can mix so many different genres of music and come and teach somebody? That's such a cool thing. Not very many people can do that. And regardless of anything else, I don't know if I've ever spoken with somebody that's been in your position that knows that much classical stuff. It's such a neat place to be. You're so unique in that perspective.
I'm a late bloomer with the classical music. For a while I refused to like it. I was inspired by drumline, as I always tell people, and then I got to band and it was nothing like drumline.
Such a cool thing to watch.
I know. And then we're playing Mary Had a Little Lamb on the Glockenspiel, and I was like, what is this nonsense? So it took a while for me to get into classical music, but once I did, I started realizing why it was important, why it was essential to study that before you could really make anything else. But as someone who can mix all the genres, I don't know, I just always wanted to do that, did it, and there's no turning back. There are no barriers now. There are no walls. No genre is safe.
So with, musically, what's the range of instruments that you're versed on? Can you play anything?
Yes, but I won't.
Well, okay, so what are your top 3 instruments that's your favorite to play?
Marimba. I like playing piano, even though I'm like super dusty. I have a 6-year-old that I actually just taught today. His name is Ramel, and he's better than me at piano. So he throws down. So marimba, piano, and probably quints or marching toms. So that's what I marched whenever I was at U of L. Those are my favorite instruments.
Well, what do you just? I don't like to use the word hate. What do you dislike to play the most?
Trumpet, which is funny because when you walked in,
when I walked in, you're playing the trumpet.
I have a weird connection with trumpet because at U of L we had to take all these courses. We had to take brass methods where you learn all the brass instruments, woodwind methods, all the woodwind instruments, piano, of course, and then also the non-majors had to take percussion, but I didn't, and I had to take string lessons as well. So trumpet, the professor would always just harp on me about how I couldn't play because my lips were like fully sized. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, that's racist. But I also played tuba towards the end of being a high school student. So to go from tuba to play trumpet was really difficult just because it's just a whole different setup with your lips. But trumpet, I was always envious because some people just got it and some people didn't. And I was one of those people who just really struggled with it. But I look at some of the greats like, Louis Armstrong.
Well, yeah, right. I was just going to say that. Yeah,
who could just throw down on trumpet and they just figured it out on their own. So
that's so neat. That's so neat being a person. So many people just find a way. If you want to do something, regardless of any of your physical or personal or whatever these obstructions, the people that want to do it don't see those things as obstructions or obstacles. They're just whatever. I'm just going to do it. That's so awesome, and that's such a commonality. If you want to do it, damn it, you're going to find a way to do it.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. If we were to sit down and ask your mom what's your best talent, what would your mom say?
I don't know. She's like overly ecstatic always about anything I'm doing.
I guess it's like a mom.
I know.
Comment on a lot of your stuff too.
What do you say?
Just comment on
your stuff.
Is your mom on Facebook?
She is on Facebook.
She's
number one fan. Shout out to my mom.
That's awesome. That is so cool. What a neat thing. How old are you?
24.
Oh God, my goodness.
I know. That's what I said too.
My next question would not be relevant to you. All right, so very, very. Actually, maybe this is very relevant. When did you start really getting popular? I would say maybe that's a difficult question for you to ask or for you to answer.
Man, I'm a band nerd, so like the word popularity to me is like,
yeah, but
what I mean.
You've been in the mix on a national scale for several years. Like I would not have, I would not think that you were as young as 24. Gosh, that's incredible. You got a lot of room to grow.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's weird to think.
And you're such a humble person for being 24.
Thank you.
I look at people that could have been in your position that, maybe the stereotype is the people that get that type of notoriety and it now I'm just blowing up.
Yeah.
But I don't get that with you at all.
No.
And that's a very, very cool place to be, because that's the long game. That's not the short game at all. So I think that's really, really cool. So if you were going to look back, even in this short amount of time, what kind of advice might you give to your 20-year-old self? That's a different question to ask than somebody. I interviewed a real estate guy, John Linehan, the other day, and he's in his 50s, so that's a totally different question from your perspective. But at the same time, it's still a might seem like a lifetime away for you.
Yeah, I would start research early, because just from being 20 to turning 24, opening a business, graduating with my master's, I've learned so much, just how to operate and maneuver and make my career move. So I would research earlier, read more, pick up more literature that was relevant to me at the time. I would do away with social media. I think that social media takes a lot of time for a lot of people, and we don't even realize it until you're on Instagram for a minute and then that minute adds up over time, and all of a sudden the year has gone by and you just wasted 1,000 minutes scrolling, looking at pictures that are super irrelevant to your life. So I would definitely research, read more, and do away with social media.
Neat.
Yeah.
Where, with that said, and you being so young and so much room to, I hate room to grow, but whatever. What's your, what do you, are you planning yourself out in, a lot of people look at the 5-year term. I know for myself, I block out myself in 2-week segments because, stuff changes so fast. Life moves so fast now. I think it's difficult to do that. But what do you want to do going down the road? What's your long terms? And what's your short terms?
Long term, I'm teaching performing all over the world in any place that needs it. So that could be in the middle of Manhattan, like earlier this week, or it could be, I don't know, in Beijing somewhere. Just random place, but I'm doing the whole teacher performer thing, all molded into one big ball of creativity.
That's awesome. Go ahead.
I don't know what I was about to say.
Where is the coolest place that life has taken you so far?
That's hard to say. In terms of the environment and the place, just nature, Interlaken, Switzerland. I played there with the Wind Symphony at U of L when I was a junior in college.
So you were 19, 20?
Yeah, and that was my first time leaving the country. And a lot of the little kids in my neighborhood thought it was so cool that I was going overseas to play music. That
doesn't happen for everyone.
Yeah, they don't think of that. They just think this is where I live, this is where I'm growing up. One day I'll get a job or whatever. But for me to go over there and be around so many different people, so many different musicians from all over the world, to experience what it's like to be in a whole new place where people don't even speak the same language as you, that was very eye-opening and definitely a game changer for me in terms of just thinking outside of my norm.
Neat. So where is the weirdest place that music and life has taken you? It's probably hard to answer too.
Yeah, that is hard to answer. The weirdest place that music has taken me.
Maybe most unassuming or most non-traditional, maybe?
I mean, this concert series that we did was a wonderful experience, but to be in an auditorium with 1,000 kids screaming the words to your songs, that was weird for me because, like I said, I'm band nerd, kind of, sly in the cut, low key, but that was a very intense feeling to receive that much energy and love from a group of kids that I've never met before.
Before noon.
Yeah, before noon. Yeah. These early morning concerts where the kids are just raging. Yeah.
That was 2 shows every morning.
Wow. That's very cool.
That was intense and that was weird, but it was a very rewarding and inspiring experience.
What do you want to leave people with when somebody comes to see you and somebody comes to experience, what your gifts are putting out there in your message? What do you want? If somebody's gonna go home and write in a journal that they saw your stuff, what do you want them to write down?
Something about themselves. I want you to leave a show and have an idea for your future, have a better idea of how you want to live your life, how you want to change your career path or start your own career in something else. I want people to leave being the best version of themselves, using that show as a medium to have a little kickstart of inspiration.
Man, that's a humble. That is a humble answer.
I mean, as a fan, I just always inspired by his stage. So I think that's something that I think everybody agrees with when they go to watch a show.
I have this from a personal deal because I've been listening to, I pulled you up on Spotify and your most recent album on Spotify is just fantastic.
Thank you.
So I'm sitting here talking to you and I've never met you before. but I listen to your music, and while I obviously see you in your music is so much more, it's more hardcore than I see you as a person right now. Mm-hmm. How do you pull that out? Where does that come from?
It's all about perspective. So most recently I released 2 albums. One's called Seance, one's called Spirit. Seance, there is a lot.
And I think Seance is what I've been listening to most.
Seance is more traditional hip hop, more traditional thinking of the young African American. That's the perspective that we have a lot of the times. Whereas Spirit is more so of this heavenly, lighter feel, the brighter side of life, and a more positive outlook on everything. I just use inspiration from my own experiences, inspiration from things that remind me of these moments. The first song on Spirit, Fly, it's basically me taking off in an airplane and being scared to death that the plane is going to crash. So the whole song's supposed to represent just letting go and wherever it takes me. So we crash, we're going to heaven. If we fly, we're going to heaven regardless. So, it just represents that.
Neat. What recent purchase of $100 or less has most positively impacted your life?
That piano bench. Yeah, I just got that a couple days ago.
Why?
It's amazing how much more effective of a pianist you can be when you have a proper seating.
True.
Proper
true.
seating,
It's all about the chip.
Yeah,
You can
good
take
foundation.
that to everything. The good
Yeah.
foundation, the good posture, the good setup behind what you're doing makes so much more of a good product with what you're doing in the end.
Yeah, and one of my students earlier noticed it. She was like, "Oh, I love this." It's like, yes. Making a difference already. Yeah. She noticed this bench that I got. So, yeah, that bench has had a wonderful impact so far.
That is awesome, man. That is awesome. Man, this has been such a cool conversation. What do you have coming up that people can connect with and that people can get involved with?
I am working on... I don't even know if I should say this or announce it.
No, you gotta say
announce
something about it now.
Just maybe a sneak peek.
Okay, I'm working on a workshop / performance experience with the Boys and Girls Club of America, and eventually what that would look like is going to these different organizations around the country, performing for the students, and then also breaking the students up into small groups, and everyone from my crew would work with them one-on-one. Whether it's the DJ giving DJ lessons, my keyboardist working with them, me teaching them how to sing, rap, write music, whatever. But we're just trying our best to enrich lives through the arts and let them know you can express yourself and have a different outlet besides what you might know growing up in your neighborhood.
That's awesome. Very cool. How can people connect with you online?
1200llc.com.
In social medias, you are probably at 1200.
At 1200 LLC, everywhere, all over the place.
Everywhere, all over the place. That's awesome, man. Jecorey 1200. I'm so thankful for sitting down with you. This has been such a cool conversation. Fantastic, love it. Thank you, man.
Thank you,
man. Everybody, thank you guys for listening. This has been the 502 Leader Series. Again, a super young leader that's really coming up in Louisville, doing some very, very cool things in a very, very unassuming and untraditional way. This is what it's all about. So cool. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good day. Thanks for listening to this episode of the 502 Leader Series. My name's Jason Mudd. If you haven't checked out our site, go to yeslouisville.com. We've got a great mix of content from business advice to living better, health-wise, fitness, nutrition, mindfulness. There's a lot of great topics that's very relevant to really pretty much anybody. Check it out, yeslouisville.com, and you can even subscribe to our newsletter at yeslouisville.com/subscribe. Thank you.